Okay, yo, what is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Big Code Hours. So today we're going to be learning about some SQL injection, and we're going to be hacking into this website that I built. So it's running on my local host using XAMPP. If you haven't seen my video on XAMPP, if you want to learn how to set up XAMPP, I have a video that shows you how to totally set it up and stuff. Anyways, it's running on my computer. Just to preface, any SQL injection that we're learning, any stuff that we're doing here is like for educational purposes, so we don't want to be using this on like real sites or trying to like hack into actual stuff because that's illegal and you're not allowed to do it. And so yeah, so instead we're going to be testing on the own site that I built. If you guys want to test on my site, I think I'll probably put the code up on my GitHub at some point. And I'll probably link that below in the description. That way you can test the stuff that I'm doing. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into it. So what is SQL injection? On the site PortSwinger here, just for the credit for this picture. Essentially, you got like a hacker, right? Someone who is inputting SQL strings into like either a form or a login or something like that. Something where the web page is sending that sending the user's submission to the database, right? So also, if you don't know anything about SQL, this video might be confusing at times. You can still totally follow along and it's still going to be cool. But if you know SQL, or if you don't know anything at all, you might want to just brush up a little bit just to understand the concepts. But yeah. Anyway, so this guy right here is, he's entering this union select statement into this form. So obviously this form, what it does is you enter something like GIFs, right? And it's going to select the name description from the products table where the category equals GIFs. But instead of it being GIFs, he's putting on this little quotation mark with the union select statement and then a comment right here at the end. So what this actually will do is it will go inside of this query and it'll go ahead and it'll close up the GIFs, right? And then it'll start a new statement, or that's like doing a union select with username and password from users, and then it comments out anything that actually would have been on the end of that statement. So maybe there's stuff that came after GIFs in the actual code, but they're doing this, so that's going to negate it. And what they're actually going to do is they're going to union this table, the name and description products table, with the user name and password table from the user. So when this returns this data from GIFs, it's also going to return the full username and passwords from the entire user's database, which this totally would work, probably would work on a lot of systems if people weren't so like well protected. Obviously, most websites protect themselves, so you wouldn't be able to do something like that. But certainly the concept is very probable and very possible. So anyways, let's get to the actual hacking stuff here. That'll be more fun. So welcome to the bank, son. Go ahead and get you some. This is a banking site that I created. It's nothing crazy, but yeah, it's just some cool stuff here. So anyways, I built like a member login. I actually built this a while ago, so yeah. So here's a member login. So I got a notepad open here so that you can kind of follow my thought process, so we can walk each other through this. So essentially I got a login here. So let's go ahead and just like type in some random stuff and try to log in. Okay, it says your username and password is invalid. Obviously, that's not a username and password that's in our database. So what are we going to do now? We could sign up and create a login, which is fine, but it might be kind of fun to see if we can get into account, right? This system is probably vulnerable, which I know is vulnerable because I created it. And so there's definitely SQL that we can input in here to get in. So let's just type some stuff here real quick. Okay, so essentially what we probably have here is something that says select ID or select something from, and then we're probably going to have a table called users or accounts, something like that. It really doesn't matter. We don't care what that is, but we're going to be selecting something from, again, this is what's happening in the background, right? When we log in, we can assume that kind of what I'm typing here is what's happening in the background, which I know it is, but this is kind of the basic concept of what a login system is going to do. So yeah, so it's going to say select something from accounts where, and then it might be like username equals something and password equals password, right? So that's probably what's happening, is it's grabbing the username and password that we enter. It's selecting probably like the ID or something from the table, where the username equals the username that I type in and the password equals the password that I type in. So it matches it. If I type in a username and password that doesn't work, then it's not gonna go through, right? It's gonna tell me invalid. So what we have to think about is that there's probably a variable here and a variable here. So what we can actually do is something like this. So let's say we enter for our username a quotation mark, right? So then it's gonna take, and let's say that is all we enter, right? So there's no variable. So we enter a quotation mark. So now it's gonna take, now it's gonna be looking at this. It's gonna say where username equals nothing, quotation mark, and password equals variable or whatever. So yeah, so that's not really gonna make like a ton of sense. But what if we were able to do something where we said username equals nothing or nothing equals nothing? So that's going to do in the database is it's looking for a condition, right? So essentially what's happening is it's saying, okay, as long as username equals this correct value and password equals this correct value, then log them in. But if we add this right here, now it's going to say, okay, your username has to equal the correct value, or this can equal this, which it does. You could also say like 1 equals 1, anything that's like the same, right? It doesn't really matter what you're putting there. But essentially, what that's going to do, if this is what we are actually entering for the username, so this is what's happening normally, it's grabbing our input, but if this is what we enter for the username, then it's going to think that this is what's actually in the SQL. So if we also did that for the password, right? Now what the system is going to think is it's going to say username needs to equal this and password needs to equal this, or this equals this. So essentially what that's going to do is it's probably going to allow us to log in. So I got this right here. I'm going to copy and paste it in. So we're saying if quote or 2 single quotes equals quote, then we'll also put that for the password. See what happens. Boom. So it did log us into an account. And again, like that totally worked. That essentially was SQL injection. What that did was it logged us into the very first account that's been created on this system, because it said essentially like, oh, well, username can equal anything and password can equal anything. So just log them into the very first item that comes through. That's how that totally worked. And so now we're into an account. Says this is my name, but let's pretend it's someone else's account. So this is some guy's account. The first person who has ever like created an account in this system, that's their account. There's their account number, there's their total balance, there's their transaction, like I added 100, minus 12, added 23. Yeah, and this is something I made, so you can just like add values. So deposit 10, it puts like 10 in there and it adds it to your total. So it's just like kind of fun, obviously not realistic, but anyways, so now that we're in, we need to think of what kind of vulnerabilities can we expose. So there's like the obvious, which is the fact that we're just in an account, right? But at the moment, all we can really do is get into one account. So we're probably going to want to do some stuff to see if we can get into other accounts. One thing that I would say that I noticed is that it came up with this name right here, and I'm assuming, right, we would assume that this is probably not the username, right? The username probably isn't just the person's first name. We can assume that they're probably grabbing this from the database as like a first name entry, right? So let's go down here. So what we can then think about is, okay, that's something that's getting populated from the database that's showing up on our screen that would probably be easy to access, right? Because it's probably going to be in a users table or an account profiles table or some sort of information table that would be easy to obtain. But before we do that, we're gonna have to figure out what kind of exploits we can do. So it looks like the only inputs that we have is this deposit and withdrawals, two tabs. So obviously, like, the only way that we can perform SQL injection is by entering something into this like deposit tab. So that makes us have to, again, go back to thinking, okay, what can we put in here that can give us an unwarranted response, right? So let's think about it. Essentially it has the account ID and then the amount that we're adding, right? So we can, for the most part, assume that probably something is happening where it's inserting into the database an amount somewhere. So it's probably doing an insert into statement, right? So it's probably inserting something into the database, and then it has two or something values. So it could be like value 1 or value 1, value 2, and then it inserts the values of the account ID 1025, and then it might be like the amount that we're depositing, like $10, right? So yeah, so essentially that's it's probably something like that it's doing. I know that it's doing that because I know how the system I created works, but in a system like this, you can probably kind of assume something like this is going on. So that means we wouldn't necessarily know the values. Again, it would take more time to know how many of these there were and how to go about this, but for our instances, I will tell you that we know that this last value is the deposit amount. So that means whatever we enter here is getting put in this spot right here. So what that means is we could do something like this, right? So if we were to enter a statement like, let's say we just enter a number like 10, and then we put a pound sign. So that in SQL or MySQL, what the system is using, the pound sign is going to go ahead and negate everything that comes after this. So this is all that's going to get run by the system, which would cause an error. But what we're going to do instead is we're going to enter in this. We're going to enter in 10, or we could just say like 1 for $1. So we were entering this string, right? So instead of it being like 10 or whatever we're depositing this string into there. Now you would hope that the system is smart enough to realize that that's not a number and do something about it. But we can pretty like easily check that. So let's go ahead and see. Let's see what happens when we enter this into our system, when we deposit 1 like that. Ooh, so it went through as $1, which means that we know that all that's happening is this is getting commented out and that our 1 is getting put in place of here. So that entering this string in essentially lets us put in here whatever we want, right? That's what's happening. We can put anything in this spot now that we want to put in there. So let's try to attack this this section right here, the first name section. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and what we're going to go ahead and do on here is we're going to try to update that table. So what we're going to say is update, and then again, there's ways to go about this. For this video, we're just kind of going to guess or assume that the table is called users, which we know that it is. But let's say we assume that the name is users. But as far as first names go in a database, there's probably not a ton of options, right? There's probably first name, F name, maybe first name, maybe name, right? There's some options, but it's probably going to be like one of those 4. So essentially we can say update users set, let's say first name, let's set it equal to, let's just try to change it, right? So let's say Justin B. So we're going to go ahead and update that, and then we're going to want to update that where users dot first name equals Justin, right? The reason that we're adding that where statement on there is right now we're updating the users and we're changing the first name to this, but how's it going to know what user to do? We're going to have to make sure to specify that the user first name equals Justin. We know that it does, or we assume that it does. So let's see what happens when we put that in there, right? Remember, our statement that we're entering in here is this. So this is our actual like injection right here that we're entering into there. I'll put it up here so you guys can see it better. Yeah, so that's the actual injection that's getting stored in this spot in the variable. So let's put that in there. Let's just see what happens real quick. Ooh, so nothing happened. So that makes us think that maybe it's not first name, maybe it's F name, right? So we can try that. Let's try F name. It is depositing $1 every time, but not seeming to work. So let's try first name. Oops, sorry about that. So users dot first name. Okay, let's see if this does it. So that looks like, oh. Yeah, it looks like I had, sorry if you were following along with me, I don't know I had that set in there. Let's try that again. Ooh, so that did work. I kind of knew it was supposed to work, so I wasn't sure why it didn't at first, but for some reason I had the word set in there. I must have somehow copied that over. Anyway, so we inputted that in there, and essentially what it did was it changed in the database. It ran this update command in the database, which is terribly insecure. So we know now that we can update anything in the database that we want to, because we have full access right now. So that's pretty cool. So we've changed the first name to Justin B. So what we're going to do now is we know that when we logged into this account, that because of the SQL injection we did to log in, we know that this is the very first account in the system. So now what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to grab the ID, right? So what we're actually going to do, because if we get the ID, and I'll show you in a sec why the ID matters. First, let's go ahead and grab it. All right, so we're going to go ahead and go right here. And we're going to say select, well, yeah, let me show you this as well. So we can kind of assume that the ID in databases is typically denoted as ID for the column name, right? We usually know that. But if we don't, I have something cool here that I can show you guys. I'm just going to copy and paste it in here. So we're going to say first name equals, right? We're going to say first name equals, and then we're going to do a nested select statement here. And that select statement is going to say select column name from the information schema.columns, or table name equals users, right? Because we know users is a table because we were able to change this up here with that statement that we had entered before. So no users is in the table. And we're going to say where the column name is like ID and just limit it to 1. So it's going to essentially look in the users table, right? It's going to try to find the first table name that is close to ID, that has ID in it, right? That's what these do, is it pretty much just says if it has ID in it, then grab it. And then we're going to need to say where first name equals, right, Justin B, because now we know that. Okay, so let's go ahead and see what that gives us right when we enter this in here. Okay, boom. That changed it to ID, right? So what this did essentially was it told us that that in the users table, where the columns is like ID, go ahead and grab it and set that as the first name. So it looks like ID is the name of the ID column. So now you might be wondering, why is that important and why do you need it? Well, just hold on, we're getting there. So now we're going to want to know what the ID of this account is, right? So now let's go ahead and say, so where first name equals ID, right? Because that's what it equals now. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and grab this select statement right here. Okay, so what we're going to do, so this is going to be a nested select statement in that same spot. It's a different nested select statement. So then we're going to select ID from users, where user's first name equals ID, right? Because that's what we'd set it to ID. And then again, we're going to update the actual first name to be the user that has ID, right? So that's why it's nested like that. Let's see what happens when we do that. Oh, snap. So that just gave us 20. So now we know that the ID of this user is 20, which is actually like really bad, because now we can assume that all the users that come after 20 are just other users in the system. Since this is the first user in the system, now we know that all the users are just ones that come after this first user. So now we can go ahead and we can say all right, let's just go here. So now let's say update the first name. Let's say select first name from users where now let's say users.id equals 21, right? Because we have 20 right here. We know that that's the Justin user account, but let's go ahead and try. And now we know that the first name is 20, so we're changing it here, right? Every time we change this first name, we got to change it here for our injection. So now we're going to go ahead and try to grab the user who is equal to 21. Let's see what happens when we do that. Oh, okay, so right, we're not logging into different people's accounts. We're in the same account, but now we know that user number 21, their name is Big Bob. It's kind of weird, but yeah, let's try. So, okay, so again, that's changing our first name. So let's change it here. And let's grab user number 22. See what happens when we grab their account information. Uh-oh. So it looks like user number 22 is the admin. So that would be something that obviously is pretty like important. That's the admin account. So what we can do now is we can say select, and we can assume that there's probably a table called password. If not, you can go ahead and run if you didn't know if there was password in the users table or not, you could run this nested select statement again. And instead of this being ID, you could put like pass, you know, and see if there's anything that resembles that in the table, like password or something like that. But I'm going to tell you now that it is password is a name, and that's likely what it is in most databases. That's what people often use. So now we're going to be selecting change this to admin. So now we're going to be selecting the password from the user whose ID equals 22, or we could even say user.firstname equals 22, or first name equals admin, whatever we wanted to do, but user.id equals 22, where the user's first name equals admin, right? So that's our user. Right now the first name of our user is admin because we've changed that manually. Now we're going to see if we can grab the password from the admin. Oh snap. So yeah, so since we sorry, it's just exciting. Low key. So yeah, so now that we have put this SQL injection in there, that has gone ahead and given us the password of the user that equals ID 22, and it's set it equal to the first name of the current user that we're logged into. So we didn't have to log into this user necessarily. We could have logged into a different we could have made our own account and run the same injection, but it was cool to get in through the login and then know that that user was the very first person in the database because of the way we did our injection. So now we have this password for the admin. So what we could do if we wanted to was we could log out and we could log in, paste that password in here, say admin, and boom. The reason the password is still like this is because we actually changed it in the admin account. Either that or I just have some bug in my PHP code, which could all some session bug or something. But regardless, we have obviously logged into a different account, which is the admin account, which seems to have $1 million in it or something like that. But yeah, so essentially that. And let me pop over here to the database. So yeah, as you can see, the first names all got changed over time to the password of the admin just because of the way we're going about it, or it was just an issue in my code. Regardless, it doesn't really matter because we were able to get the password to the admin account, which was this password. Yeah, so again, this is the database that I had created. It has transaction table in there. These are the transactions that you can see that we made with all those ones that we were entering. It has accounts and users, but this is just showing you the back end of how it worked. But essentially, yeah, essentially through the SQL, all through SQL injection, we were able to find all of the accounts. We were able to log into accounts. We were able to log into the admin account. Um, so obviously there are ways to go about protecting that. If you guys want me to, in another video, I can show you how you and your code can protect people from doing stuff like that. Because there's a lot of um, methods that you can go about to keep people from injecting like this. Like there's some that I could implement right now that would have stopped every single one of those injections. But in an insecure site like this, you can totally do stuff like that. And it's really not that hard. You just have to dig around a little bit, throw some different requests at it, slowly figure out information, right? That's what we did. We slowly figured out information, figured out what tables were called, figured out ID numbers, stuff like that. And eventually we were able to get into an admin account and we were able to get the password and stuff like that. So yeah, that's the video for today. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I tried to just go through it pretty quickly, but if you guys want the code for this or anything like that, I think I'm going to put it on my GitHub and link it so you can see that. If you guys have any other video ideas or anything like that, just let me know in the comments. I would appreciate a like, and if you haven't subscribed already, I would appreciate a subscribe. I haven't done a video in a little bit, so this was really fun. And yeah, just let me know what you guys want to see more of, and I will be happy to make it. So have a great day, everybody. Goodbye.